I'm here to introduce Alex Salazar. Alex currently works as an IT security architect with Snohomish County in Everett, Washington. He previously worked with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency as a cybersecurity advisor in the Seattle area. Prior to CISA, Alex worked for the University of Washington IT as a cyber intelligence analyst. Alex currently serves as an officer in the Washington Army National Guard and volunteers his time as a board member with Washington InfraGuard. Alex holds an undergraduate degree from Central Washington University and a master's degree from the University of Washington. Welcome, everyone.
Hey, appreciate that, Jeannie. Yeah, it's been an eventful year since I talked to you guys last. I find it really full circle that we had you guys had some change in the attendees, and I'm having to cover in for a CISA slot. But yeah, so yeah, just happy to be here. Happy to be at Snohomish County. It's a great place to work out. Happy to be a part of the SLTT ecosystem of IT and sphere of professionals. I think I saw some of you guys at ACES last week. So yeah, just great to be here. So I got asked for a topic. Funny enough, I'm giving this same presentation next tomorrow at the Cybersecurity Summit in Bellevue. So I thought it'd be a great topic to bring to you guys. I also get a free trial run. So if you guys get lost in anywhere in my presentation, let me know, because I'd love the feedback. Get some last minute tweaks before I present it tomorrow at the summit. But yeah, really specifically, there's been a lot, since 2023, there's been a lot of talks about AI and its use in cybersecurity. So I had a really cool use case earlier this month. I've had a lot of use cases, but this one has a great story that I really think shows the power of using AI, whether it's Copilot or something, and how we can get some security insights out of it. Yeah, as mentioned, I'm a security architect with Snohomish County. You guys probably familiar where that is. So that's up here in Everett. You're also familiar. We're very similar to other large counties. Have corrections, sheriffs, Department of Health, Public Works, all the good stuff that our local residents use and expect out of their local government. And our charge as an IT, and then specifically as information security up here, is to make sure that's available, but also protected and compliant. So with that, yeah, just start a little bit on the problem statement. So what got me started on this using Copilot for a specific data problem we're facing, how that journey went, and then at the end, we'll just talk some reflections. Obviously, some disclaimers. First off, this isn't a paid advertisement, although I'm thankful to Microsoft for the free licenses that we get for Copilot. Secondly, this is an educational presentation, so always refer to Ralph, always refer to Jeannie as your information security officials before you do anything that I say. And then lastly, if you see anything blacked out, that's because I'm tweaking it or sanitizing it, of course, to protect any of our sensitive data. So overall, a little bit of our Copilot journey. It's probably very similar to y'all's at Watex, because I think we all got the free licenses around the same time. But really, this really goes back to 23 when ChatGPT launched, and bam, we have this technology that's landed on the footsteps of the world. And what are we going to do with it? How are we going to let our users utilize it? And what governance are we going to set up around it? So the county actually published an interim policy that I think was probably modeled off what Watek and you guys made up there in June of 2024, which is great. It enabled us to use AI, which I think is when I was at CISA, I saw different journeys with folks with AI. A lot, we're like, hey, hands off. We're not going to bring this in the enterprise. Like, don't touch it. And then some folks were like, hey, this is revolutionary. Let's enable our folks to use it. And I'm glad that the county took that approach. So currently we're piloting Copilot thanks to the Microsoft free licenses. We have about 40 of them. And this project is led by our data governance team, which I think is great. While security, has some stake in it and there's some concerns, I think it's great when data governance is leading this because or there's just a lot of nuanced legalities, a lot of um, you know of applications and use of it, a lot of like infrastructure considerations that within security we can talk about them, but it's not really our ownership realm. So I think it's great when the governments are leading these rollouts. So the problem statement about earlier this month, my CISO goes up to me and like, hey, we had contracted for a pen test, so we had an outside vendor in our environment running Nessus scans and Nmap scans, and we're barely getting any alert for it. And we're like, this, it's about the third day. We would have expected some stuff out of Defender, and we weren't really seeing it to the scale that we thought. So I was like, okay, I'll look into it. Um, I'm pretty new to the job, still pretty new, and so I didn't really know everything about our environment. I had some KQL experience, which is how I'm going to interact with or the query that I'm going to ask Copilot about, and I had some Defender experience with previous roles, but not to the extent that we have it rolled out at the county. And then, but I did have a good understanding at Nmap, NSYS, and just basic TCP/IP, which will come into play in this story in a bit. And then, the third person in this whole story line is, Copilot, and they have, all of humanity's intelligence at its disposal. So here's kind of the three players in this story. So our initial investigation, we, we did get an alert about port scanning, but it was from a vendor, and this vendor had their own like a behavioral monitoring software server, and that was kind of really kicked it off for us that hey, we're just missing stuff. And it was great because that alert gave us a machine and date and time. And with that, I'm able to get in our Defender log and go see this machine, go through its timeline, and like, okay, I see that Defender did record an inbound host vertical port scan action type, activity type, but it did not alert. So um, we have a problem. Like what's going on with that? So let's see if we can figure out a solution. I have a Copilot beta license, so let's see if Copilot can help me out. So that's what I did. I went over. I asked Copilot, hey, how do I send up an alert in Defender for inbound host vertical scan? And it's initial attempt looks good, and with a lot with like ChatGPT or Copilot Grok, those initial outputs look good, but when you start getting under the hood of it, it's either hallucinated or just refers to things that are a little weird or a little off. And in this case, click say the logic was a bit broken, and specifically at this step, as I'm following through this steps that it's giving me, this just doesn't exist. And kind of the closest thing to it where I could put this field is more of just like a text field. It didn't really like set up any queries. So I kind of had to turn away from this approach. So, okay, I'm going to pull away from working with Defender. Let's see if I can just write a custom CUSA query language detection rule for it. So that's what I asked for. And it did a great step as well. It's also great because I'm not familiar with the Sunoco schema as much yet, right? We would want it, that everybody employs Microsoft the same way, but we don't, right? Watech probably has some different table names in Defender than we at the county do. There's different ways people cut the cheese. But it was great because in this initial interaction, I'm starting to see, I'm like, oh, okay, we have a device. There's could be a possibility for device network events table rule. And I'm starting to understand our environment. But while again, this KQL looked great, I kept coming back with null results. And I think it's just the way it was querying for that string of inbound host vertical scan. It just that didn't really correlate to anything else in that timeline, in that table. And yeah, so I kept going back and forth with it. As you can see here, we had about oh, hey, I got a laser. You could see that I was trying different table names, just not able to go here. So we had to think about a different approach. And this is where I call Copilot coaching. This is where, instead of just expecting results from Copilot, I took some time to think about it. I'm like, hey, how can I approach Copilot to think a little differently or to try to get it to the result that I want. And that is where I asked, I took a step back and asked a better question. Like, hey, we know that we had an inbound host scan on this machine that I blacked out on this date at this time. Can we query the timeline of this and develop, let's just try to get something from the time of events that happen. And this is great because Copilot kind of agreed with me. And this is where I call it coaching. You're like kind of steering it where you want it to go. And so, they got another great query, but unfortunately, it was still a null. But we're starting to get somewhere. It broke away from like, okay, I'm just looking for this action type, and I'm stuck. Like, how can I find this action type? And it's like, oh, okay, like let's be a little more broad about this. Let's look at it, something different. Um, so I gave it some more human coaching, and I took some more time to think of like, hey, how can I get Copilot to zero in on the events that are happening? Not so much like a specific flag, but I just wanted to identify port scanning. And so I just did a simple KQL query for at the machine name at the time of the event, or the kind of the time span, about 5 minutes. um, Let me just dump this 13,000 rows of information to Copilot, and like, hey, within this time of events, with all these data fields that you could possibly have, uh, the port scan happening. And I really highlight that this is a power with Copilot. And normally, if I'm working with a coworker, if I gave him an Excel sheet with 13,000 rows, he or she's gonna just blow me off. Like, what are you doing, dude? Like, you got to help me. Like, what are you looking for in here? But with Copilot, in milliseconds, it digested it. It identified, like, hey, like actually, there's a series inbound connection type. I can use that. I could also use the device network events table, and it actually started uh, cleaning up or adjusting the query for more of the event that I'm looking for, and we started really getting somewhere. And Copilot started to innovate with me. Yeah, and so with that, we finally got something. That's actually, well, it's not. That's the first query there that I actually got results. This whole time I was just facing null, 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 no results. But this one finally gave me some results. And if you guys are living KQL, you might see the error already. But there was a kind of a big error in here that I didn't find out till later. But so we're gonna keep talking about that journey. And so that error, I kept seeing um, these really high port connections, or really high numbered port connections, right? Like 55,000, 65,000, 45. And I was like, man, like why? And then it was just a lot. I was seeing a lot of connections. Excuse me. And it got to thinking, I'm like, wait, I'm not really worried about all 65,000 ports, right? I'm really worried about 1,024, because these are reserve ports. If you guys work in networking or cybersecurity, you know that each one of these first 1024 have a purpose and they're reserved. So that's where I'm really worried about scanning events, because I'm going to be seeing a lot of connections in those upper 45s, 55, 65,000s. But really, if I see a scanning event within the first 1024, that tells me that somebody is specifically looking, maybe for an open door. So I did that, and this is a little more of where I'm just kind of highlighting that while Copilot, has a lot of knowledge and can present a lot of data, I just wanted to highlight, hey, as humans who work in these industries, we do still have some expertise to contribute. So here is some just expertise I was contributing to kind of refine this query some more. The second thing, anybody who's used Nmap, you might be familiar with this specific Nmap command. And what it does is it's a stealth scan, and you can set a rate. And so, with that, if I'm specifically looking for nefarious actors in my environment, I have to also take an account for this. I don't have the screenshot, but I did ask for it to account for people maybe either adding latency to their scans, or just trying to do obfuscation attempts, and just extend that how long this query is going to aggregate those connections for a certain IP. And then lastly, I still had a lot of rough data. And I was like, man, I'm just seeing it wasn't usable. I'm just getting a lot of alerts. I'm finally getting data, but it's just a lot more than I'm expecting. And I also kept seeing 65, up in those upper thousands. And this was another like Copilot coaching and teaching moment. Again, I'm not a pro in KQL, quite yet, but I'm getting there. And I ended up just looking. I paused instead of just accepting, what Copilot was scripting to me. I took time to actually read the script, and in there you could see kind of the error, and it was looking for remote IP connections, which makes sense, right? When you connect to a web page, you're going to get a 443 port or 80, and it's going to give you back, you're going to connect a connection through 55, 45, 65,000. So the reason I was getting all these alerts and this data wasn't really useful was it was focusing in on that client side IP. So I was like, hey, I asked that question. I'm like, hey, I'm noticing this. Like, should it be something local? And it actually corrects itself. Well, yeah, actually, you're right, Alex. We should make this query specific for local ports. And that was it. That was that really after that, I had some really great data. I was actually able to see our pen test machine, and I was able to hone it in on the pen test machine that we had. And now we, it's not a perfect script still, but we have a pretty good looking script that's able to alert to us when we have scanning embeds in our environment. Um, I did a lot of Copilot coaching highlights initially, but I also wanted to highlight, it did teach me a little bit. I didn't think about scanners, right? I'm sure Watech has scanners, Snohomish has scanners. So we have to take an account for, hey, there's machines that are going to be legitimately scanning every device and scanning every port. And, I have to take an account for that. So that was a great thing that Copilot thought of that I didn't. And then additionally, again, I'm not familiar with a lot of these tools quite yet. I'm getting there, but Copilot knew how to correct some of my queries when I wasn't, hey, like when I'm getting errors, it's able to kind of correct the query to get it so it can load correctly in Defender. So yeah, I mean that was it was mission accomplished. I say it, within a day, about 6-7 hours, I was able to accomplish what might have taken a whole week, maybe even longer. This journey was great because it kind of highlights that these GPTs are great companions. And again, I'm grateful that the county has taken an approach where we're authorized to use this technology. I was a lot of news articles are saying, hey, it's the end of IT and we're all going to go away. At least right now with the current GPT models, there's still some nuanced debugging that has to happen, and you saw that in my journey. That it's still important to know those fundamentals about networking. If you didn't learn about that in school, you're going to have to learn about the 65,000 ports. If you never touch Nmap, you wouldn't know that some people would try to hide scanning attempts, stuff like that. So those nuanced things still, from a human perspective, are still needed. And then again, I'm thankful because if I didn't have this, I would be putting sensitive raw timeline data on. I wouldn't do this, but if I did, the only place I would have to is ChatGPT, which is open, it's public. It's like bam, now I'm giving those folks up there or maybe some other LLM some of our sensitive data. So, but because they've set up a framework for me to have a controlled Copilot instance and the data can be retained in our tenant, I feel safe. I am able to experiment, I'm able to innovate, and that's something I just want to highlight. That if your organization's still pumping the brakes, that like, hey, like they're going to have to, you might get people start turning to public models, and now like your intention of keeping yourself safe has actually made it even worse because people are really wanting to use these tools and might be putting sensitive data out there on the public models. Of course, I had asked Copilot what did it think about our conversation, and I asked it what it, hey, like I'm about to give this to a bunch of professionals. What do you want to tell them? All that bottom part's just like Microsoft, a Microsoft pitch, but that top part is really kind of he. It's a context-aware security analyst at machine speed. And that kind of goes back to highlight, this would have probably taken me a day or a week. I was able to accomplish this in a day. It's able to hyper learn, and it's also able to like hyper teach me the specific things I need to know about to be, get something done. And with that, it's kind of quick. Uh, I'll take any questions or go back to anything.
Thanks, Alex. I turned the chat on, so if anyone wants to come off camera or come on camera and off mute, they can ask a question, or you can put any of the questions in the chat.
Great question, Christian. We're just using M365 Copilot, and it's just the prompt. We're on the GCC tenant, and I don't think, at least last I heard, Copilot for Security is not in there, and that's not the free licenses I think Microsoft's giving out. It's just I'm very much having to bring everything over that I wanted to look at. I imagine this might have been a lot more faster if it was Copilot for Security, because that has all the API connections into our Defender portal. Also open a feedback if you, again, I'm giving this tomorrow. If you guys got lost or think I need to change something, let me know. Love to hear the feedback. What best practices should be followed to prevent prompt hacking or unintended? Yeah, going back to kind of the journey, and Jose Matthews is our direct division leader of data governance. I can connect you with him if you're interested. But actually, I think Watek, you guys have your own. I think she's a lawyer. She spoke at ASIS talking about. She might be on this call, but you guys have data governance folks. That's really where it has to start. You have to set up some policy, like, hey, don't use these public-facing models. From the security side, we've actually blocked SaaS OAuth attempts to like ChatGPT and Grok. So that way we don't get folks trying to connect with their Snohomish County accounts to these models. DeepSeek, we just straight up blocked even you getting to that web page. And just trying to, we have a policy, but also some actual security controls to get folks to use models that we want them to use. And then lastly, it's data governance. So data labeling is going to have to be huge. The reason I can't speak for the governance team, but I believe one of the reasons we're just using the prompt model is to just ensure what's going in is what we want it to. Because if we just let it have free reign, there's some data governance works that has to happen so that we're able to identify, that category 3, category 4 data that we just don't want it to ever enter the model at all. So in terms of best practices, it's AI or not, it's data governance, because like Copilot answer for itself, it's a machine speed analyst. We've if you've been led by security through obscurity, that's going to go away because the machine will find it and will touch it and will read it. So we really have to put like those data labeling protections ahead of time. Cool, appreciate y'all. Yep, that might have been Katie. Yeah, it might have been Katie over at that came down to ASIS and talked about your guys' state journey for that.
Okay, we'll give it another minute and see if there's any other questions. In the meantime, just a reminder that we'll be wrapping up the Cybersecurity Awareness Month with stats and data and all kinds of fun information next week on November 4th at 12 o'clock. So if you can join us during your lunchtime, that would be great. Do we have any other questions for Alex?
Well, Alex, thank you so much. We really appreciate you filling in last minute, and we loved your presentation. I didn't see any errors. I don't know if anybody else did, but thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thank you all.
Okay.
See you.
Bye, everyone.